My name is Ray O'Keefe. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Miami Men's Group, a bunch of chauvinistic losers and probably the worst bunch of incurables that have ever assembled under one roof and call themselves an AA group. I have one announcement here that was left by Bob. I'll just take a minute. So this is from the hotel. It says, in case of fire, would all the Al-Anons please remain seated until the alcoholics are well clear of the building. Sounded important to me. I've been happy to be here this weekend, and I've seen some old friends and met some new friends, and I've certainly admired this work behind me here of the young Clancy Immerslin explaining the AA program to the psychiatrists at the Big Springs Institute in Texas. It's inspirational. So they asked me over here because I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous a long time. And you can tell by looking at me, I've been someplace for a long time. I grew up, or at least I got a little taller, in one of the neighborhoods in New York City. And my neighborhood was rough, and it was tough, and it was Irish. Now, you may not understand it here in Tampa, but they drank in that neighborhood. You would actually see people on the sidewalk under the influence of alcohol. Difficult to believe, yes. If you look where I live, you see a little drinking. My mother, the widow O'Keefe, was known to take a drink from time to time. If the pressure got on, Kitty would go for the light wines and the spirits, and something would fly, usually one of the children. I found out about 4 years ago I'm from a dysfunctional family. Functioned all right for me, I'll tell you. Breakfast at 7, dinner at 6, and don't be late. That was it. My brother Billy, on the other hand, was a raging alcoholic, and in a neighborhood of Irish drunks, Billy O'Keefe stood out. So when I dropped by the local place and ordered up whatever it was they were serving 14-year-olds that afternoon, nobody paid any attention to me at all. It was just another O'Keefe coming through the system. I guess I got a beer. That was a neighborhood drink. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't, but I think it was a beer. Whatever it was, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I liked the way it looked. I liked the way it smelled. I liked the way it tastes. I liked what it did for my head. I liked the noise and the smoke and the confusion. And I liked the fistfights and the Irish music. I liked the bullshit. That's what I liked. And I spent the next 20 years going after it. I was going through the parochial school system, in a manner of speaking, and I got into all of the difficulties that you would imagine a young man would get into trying to go through that system drunk. I was thrown out of high school a number of times. I held the neighborhood record for being thrown out of high school. A record previously established by my brother Billy. Because of somebody's error or mistake, or maybe even a miracle, I ended up going to college. And that was unusual. Somebody like me would go to college, but I went to college, and off I went. To college, and I had to go up there in the state of Vermont, and When I arrived, I found it was a culture shock. There were no bars in the state of Vermont. There were only restaurants, and you sat at tables and drank beer out of bottles. And so I learned how to do that. And you sit around these tables, you drink the beer out of bottles, and you sing dopey songs, and you wear white shoes in the wintertime. So I did all of those things, and I was going to college, and World War II was just about over. Looked like a pretty good bet that we were going to win. And so one day I got a haircut and I joined the Navy. And I ended up on a minesweeper in San Francisco. I hate to be indelicate to such a nice group of people, but I have to tell you, I had a lot of trouble with my kidneys when I drank. And in the Navy, we slept three to a tier. Don't get ahead of me now. It's not so easy up there. So I did my first liberty in San Francisco with all the beer in me I could buy, and I came back to the ship, went to sleep, and I had one of those accidents. But I met the fellow who slept below me. I suppose he imagined he'd be wet sometime during his naval career, but it hadn't occurred to him it would happen while he was sleeping. So I was immediately transferred to a lower bunk. And the rest of my naval career was just as distinguished as that. And I came back home about 3.5 years later, undecorated, unhonored, unloved, and back to the neighborhood. Everything was under control in the neighborhood. The widow was out in the weeds somewhere. My brother Billy was missing from the New York City Police Department. Billy had had a misunderstanding with a citizen who was thrown off a 5-story roof. And the citizen lived to identify the Irish cop who threw him. So Billy went west and went into another line of work. He went into a more peaceful line of work. He went back in the Marine Corps. Veterans were getting $20 a week for 52 weeks. I signed up for the club, the 52-20 club. I gravitated to the local place. I took up the game of shuffleboard, and I was planning a life of... Would you give me a glass of that? You're just sitting there hanging around. Come here. Airline captains. Airline captain. Sure you're all right? Okay, thank you. Jesus. I was planning a life of petty crime with some of my boyhood companions. You know how it works. I had a clear thought one day. I said, oh, I've been to college. I forgot. So I got on a bus and I went back up there. And there they were. I walked in. They were sitting around this table, drinking beer out of a bottle, singing those songs, wearing those shoes. So I got another pair of shoes. Now a grateful government was sending me a check every month. And that was good, because I was moderately stewed all the time. And one day I was staying around the campus in my usual condition, and I saw a list of names on a bulletin board of people qualified to graduate. And my name was on the list. And that was excellent news. I thought I had another year to go. So I called up the widow and told her about this event. And she came north, and that was a very, very tender sight. The widow and her youngest child staggering around under the elms. That was beautiful, as we say in the Bronx, beautiful. I served as a trustee of that college, and I would go to meetings, and they were still talking about my mother. Isn't it so often in the state of Vermont they see a little old lady get off a train drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning? Now the question was what to do with this degree I had. And my uncles who ran the family, were all Irish and they were all cops. And they voted unanimously that I be a New York City policeman. That's what my father had been, but he died when I was 2. And that's what my brother Billy had been, and that's what all my uncles and my cousins were doing, except for the 2 morons that worked for the telephone company. But I told them that I would not be available for the police department, that I had received a scholarship to law school, and I'd be unemployed for the next several years. And that was received with mixed emotions. So off I went to law school, and I didn't know anything about lawyers or law school or anything like that. We didn't have any lawyers in my neighborhood. We had cops and we had priests. We didn't need any lawyers. I hate to be disloyal to the profession that's made Jerry Jones a wealthy man, but I have to tell you that when I got to law school, I was in the company of the greatest collection of stiffs that had ever assembled under one roof. Oh, they were so deadly. They all had on a blue suit and a pair of eyeglasses. So I got a blue suit. I got some glasses I didn't need, and I looked around for somebody to get drunk with, and nobody drank in that crowd. They're all studying. They're all grinding it out. So I became the biggest grind they ever had in that place. And as a result of that, when I came out of law school 3 years later, I was taken into a large, white, Anglo-Saxon Wall Street law firm. They hired me as sort of the resident immigrant. It was not a total loss, however. I did learn to say, "Oh, really?" instead of "no shit." We say that a lot. "Oh, really?" My superiors there determined that I should be trained as a trial lawyer, and so I was sent to the New York City courthouse to learn my trade. And I wasn't in the courthouse very long when I discovered that the really bright people were across the street in a saloon. So I moved my office into the saloon, and I learned to drink in a different, a more civilized, a more genteel fashion. I learned to drink scotch in a tall glass with ice, and you sip on that. It takes a little while, but it gets the job done. I was introduced to all of the mysteries and all of the rituals that surround a very, very dry martini. And to this morning, and to this minute, my love, my admiration, and my affection for the very, very dry martini is surely the greatest case of unrequited love the world has ever seen. I was so loyal, and they destroyed me, those things. Became time in my natural development to be married, and I had located this lady, or she had located me. Who knows how these things work? Ms. O'Keefe, my wife, my current wife. I always call her my current wife. I find it keeps her on her toes. She's from a very different background than mine. She's from a very nice family, devoted parents, and a house and a fence and a dog and so forth. Her family, I hate to be crass, but in a word, her family had a buck. I will not burden you with the details of my wedding day, but I assure you that when the O'Keefes from the South Bronx hit the Westchester Country Club, they set a few records. There was only one fight. My Uncle Bernie hit a waiter. So we settled up and settled down and set up housekeeping, and Mrs. O'Keefe began to produce children in a rather boring and monotonous fashion, and with the regularity that is known only to the Roman Catholic. We had a lot of kids. And after a couple of years or so, I had a phone call from the Fordham University School of law school I had attended, to come down and see the dean. So I went to see the dean, and he appointed me to the faculty, and I became Professor O'Keefe. And I got very nervous about this position because I really didn't know what there was in my background that justified this kind of an appointment, and I knew that I drank too much. So I decided that I would drink less. Logical, eh? And so I did. I tried to drink less in order to be comfortable in that job. And I was never able to do it. I tried, but it just didn't seem to work. A lot of other things got in the way. But after a few years of teaching, it turned out that I was a competent teacher. It was all right. I could do it. So then I didn't even have to worry about trying to control it. As long as I could do the job, I was all right. So I went back out to drink the way I liked to drink. In fact, it was the only way I knew how. As I mentioned, my father died when I was 2. Billy, my brother, was 4 years older. And if you put us side by side, we would not appear to be related. He was about 6'3" and good-looking and athletic and all the rest of it. And he was my big brother and my hero. And I did everything just like Billy did, or I tried to. And I drank like Billy. I drank until I fell down, or the cops arrived, or the place went on fire, or something. That was the way Billy did. That's the way I tried to do. I used to see people leaving. I'd see them going. Where the hell are they going? The whiskey is here. They're going over. That makes no sense. Well, and Ms. O'Keefe and I had it up to, I'm trying to remember now. We had it up to 6 or 7 kids. Maybe some more. I can't remember. A lot of kids. They're all over the place. And we had a big house, and we had cars, and I belonged to the country club, And had you asked me how I was doing in those days, I would have told you I was doing very well. As a matter of fact, I would have told you I was doing very well whether you asked me or not. One of my favorite stories. Truth of the matter was that at this time, at age 34, I was a daily drunk. And I was drunk every day, all day. And I'd wake up in the morning and start throwing up and all of that stuff. And I drank all day long. I put away 2.5 to 3 quarts of vodka every day. And I went to New York and struggled, and hit bars. And then I was trying to teach, which was a big joke. And so forth. I ran for office. I ran for political office. I lost. I ran for mayor of my town. And the guy said he's only lived here a year. I said I got here as soon as I could. What the hell? And now you may not believe some of this, but I'll tell you, while all of this was going on, Mrs. O'Keefe was not entirely silent. Believe that? True. From time to time, she would have the temerity to suggest there was something radically wrong with the way that I drank. But if I pay no attention to her, why should I? First of all, she is my wife. How much can she know? Secondly, she's not an attorney. She does not have the benefit of a legal education, so what's the point, And because she's a little on the dim side anyhow, I used to explain things to her. And I would explain to her the relativity of drinking, which is to say that some people drink more than other people. Are you with me on this now? And on a relative scale, I was not a very big drinker. As a matter of fact, I would say, I don't drink as much as my mother. And she would say, nobody drinks as much. So I'd have to leave. She'd insulted my mother. I go over and see Mom, and we'd really do it. This drove her a little crazier than she usually is, and so she betook herself to her physician, who, as you might imagine, is an obstetrician. Did I say the wrong word? And he could not find anything the matter with her until she told him about me. And then he told her about me. He diagnosed me, and I am one of the few men in Alcoholics Anonymous who have come here upon the advice of a gynecologist. This is all true. This is all true. And she told me that her doctor, the obstetrician, God bless you, sir, and your whole family. She told me that her doctor, the obstetrician, had diagnosed her husband, the law professor, as an alcoholic. Oh, Jesus. I was so upset. I rose to defend myself, as is my custom, and I took a very, very dim view of a physician who would diagnose a patient without ever having seen the patient. I was against that shabby type of medical practice, all too common in our country today. Then I went into high gear, and I asked Miss O'Keefe a question to which she has not yet discovered the answer. I asked her what kind of a man became an obstetrician in the first place. You got it. And at this point, the conversation was coming downhill at a very, very terrible rate. And then it happened. I don't know how this happened. I cannot explain to you how this happened. I can explain many, many other things to you, and I probably will in the second or third hour of this terrific talk I'm giving you. But in the middle of all of this, I stopped, and I admitted to Miss O'Keefe for the first time I'd ever admit to anybody, there was at least the possibility that I drank too much sometimes. This was a very serious tactical error. 3 days later, I was a prisoner in a mental institution in Stamford, Connecticut, and I was only there a matter of moments when I discovered a very serious architectural deficiency in the building. There was no doorknob on my side of the door. And I was overcome with great feelings of outrage and self-pity because in addition to everything else horrible that was going on that day, it was the occasion of my 35th birthday. And I mentioned this to a man in a white coat who was standing around, and I very carefully explained to that cretin that on that very day I had attained age 35, and therefore, under the Constitution of the United States of America, I was eligible for the office of president. He urged me not to plan any campaigns. He said there were 2 other presidents in residence. And he went away and he left me. He abandoned me. And I came up for air about a week later. Was visited by the staff of the hospital. They, of course, were psychiatrists. This is a very fancy rattlebox, as befitted a man of my stature, not some goddamn state-supported institution for the indigent. How you doing, Clarence? And I gave 3 different stories to 3 different doctors, and I thought I was very slick. And they called me in the next day and said I was in grave danger of being expelled from a mental institution. They said I was not cooperating. What a lie. I was cooperating. I was playing Monopoly with 3 guys, one of whom thought I was his real estate broker. And if you know anything about the game of Monopoly, and some nut thinks you're his broker, you could do very, very well. Hey, listen, I had the boardwalk, I had some hotels, and I wasn't thinking about drinking. The Monopoly therapy was working. And I'll tell you, it's just as good as the bullshit they hand out today. You get in touch with your inner child and get in touch with your feelings. Yeah, sure. You better get in touch with your sponsor or your ass is going to fall off. Don't play those games. I'm too old. So the next day, they said, you have a visitor. Oh, visitor? I didn't have any visitors. Who would visit me? So I went into my executive type-padded cell and I waited. Into the room comes very, very imposing-looking guy, and he says, I'm from Alcoholics Anonymous. Hospital's given up on you, pal. I reverted to my boyhood in the bar. I said, Alcoholics Anonymous, you rotten son of a bitch. And I started with him. Now, you're not going to believe this. You will not believe it. You know what he said to me? He said, shut up. I intuitively forgave him because I knew they had neglected to tell him who I was. So I began to tell him who I was. He said, sit down and shut up. Well, he was a very imposing-looking guy, and I was not well. And so for the first time in 35 years, I sat down, and he explained to me, as we are instructed in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, what life had been for him, what he had been like, how he had come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and what his life was like now. It was a very interesting story. And he said, would you like to go with me to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous? Do you mean, sir, to go with you outside to meetings of Alcoholics? He said, outside. I said, I'm going with you. And he gave me some matches. Nobody else allowed me to have any matches. So he was okay with me. And that's how it started. We went off. This was in 1963. Off we went. And he made arrangements for me to go locally when I got out, and I came back to where I lived, and I started to go locally, and I don't remember so much of all of that. I was turned loose with a large jar of those pills that they used to routinely give alcoholics in those days. And in those days, it was considered, alcoholism was considered a disease that was caused primarily by a Valium deficiency. And so they would give you all these pills to eat when you got out, and I was eating them, and my head buzzed a lot, and I was floating along.
Accept my alcoholism, I thoroughly approve.
So I don't remember so much all of that, but I know myself fairly well. I figured I would come to Alcoholics Anonymous. You would recognize me as a superior person. You would elect me your president. I was always president if I joined something. I always became the president. I would serve a term as your president, and then you'd give me a little dinner and a plaque, and that would be that. So 10 months later, I was very, very, very drunk. Very drunk. I lasted 10 months.
And after the meeting, a woman comes up to me and says, I can't accept
And of course, I was drunk.
I have a teenage son.
Drunk with a great difference, because I had turned away from the great power that is in the program. And this was very, very different. Things happened to me. I stayed drunk, for a period of time. I won't take you through all of that because you have things to do and I have a plane to catch. But just let me tell you, it was the worst experience of my life. It was the worst. Murder. It was murder. It was pure and simple murder. I would drink a week, and then I wouldn't drink a month, and I'd drink a month, and I wouldn't drink a week, and I'd drink here, and I wouldn't drink there. I would drink and go to meetings. I would go to meetings and drink. I never knew what the hell I was bouncing around. I never knew where I'd be. I just never knew. Things began to happen to me that had never happened to me before. Boy, they happened fast. They happened fast. Things that never happened to me before. Of course, I was removed from the faculty, dismissed as a tenured full professor of law. And all of that job, which involves a lot of things, all of the honors and the prestige and the money, was all gone in about 15 minutes. They didn't need a hearing for me. They just threw me out. And they were right. I was in serious, very, very serious personal, professional, and financial difficulties. Very, very, very serious. And I lost the affection of all those who were around me. And for, I guess, the last 6 months that I drank, I basically lived in my car. And I could not stop drinking. Couldn't stop. It wasn't as though I didn't know about drinking. I knew about drinking. What the hell? I knew about it. I had a memory. I remembered the neighborhood. I knew what happened to people like me. The Irish say it's the creature. When the creature gets you, you're dead. I knew that. I knew about my family. I'd been to the funerals. I knew what happened to people that drank as I drank. But our book tells us self-knowledge avails you nothing. The fact that I knew about it didn't stop me from doing it. And so I drank. And I'll tell you this, I really did not think I'd ever stop drinking. Didn't think it would happen. But my time came one day. My time came. I don't know any more about this than you do. But it seems to me that there is a time for all of us. And it seems to me that there is a time for each of us. I say to you that there is a line somewhere beyond which you are not permitted to go. And I say to you that there is a point somewhere below which you are simply not permitted to go. And it seems to me that there is a level of pain somewhere beyond which no human is required to endure. I don't know where this line is for you. I only know what happened to me. And this, I think, is a personal and an individual thing. And I think it is different in each case. And for some, it may be death. And that's the way it was for my brother Billy. They called one night from the vets, and he was dead in Minneapolis. And so my hero, my brother, died the way alcoholics do, without friends and without family. And he was a long, long way from our neighborhood. But I'll tell you this, my brother Billy doesn't drink anymore. And that's how he slept. And for other people, it could be something trivial. Who knows? It's different. But we all come to it in our own time and in our own way. We all come to it. And I arrived on a day that really wasn't much different from any other day. I was 3 or 4 days away from a drink. I was in this place where I had gotten a job. I was nervous. I was thirsty. There was a bar in the lobby of the building. And I was thinking it over. I had some money. I had settled a case. I had some dough. And I made a phone call to a longtime member of this program who was a fellow I knew, a lawyer, a longtime friend of mine. And his name was John, and he's my sponsor. And I told him what was going on with me that day, and he said, well, I'll be over. I don't have much to do. So he came over to my office, and he walked in that office, and he looked so good. And I felt so bad. So I said to him, how can I be as successful as you are in AA? He gave me that look. You know that look that sponsors have? And he said, don't drink and go to the meetings. You'll be all right. I said, no, John, but crap. I said, save that for the dummies. See, you really don't understand. My problem, my real problem, is this place where I work. I'm a much too good lawyer to be in this dump. Yeah, he said, well, if you don't drink and you go to some meetings, you might get a better place. I said, you know, at home it's worse. I'm not even allowed to go up there anymore. Yeah, I said, well, you know, if you don't drink and you go to the meetings, you might work something out there. I said, you know, I'm being sued by a bank. Oh, yeah. He said, I heard about that. A misunderstanding about a loan application. Well, he says, you know, those cases get settled. I began to sense that there was no dialogue there. And so did he, because he said, come on, you're not doing anything. And he made a couple of phone calls from my phone. Took me over to Grand Central, put me on a train up. And it's about 40 minutes to where I live. And about 20 minutes into the train ride, I reconsidered. You understand? You know, what the hell did I must have panicked. I got my hand in my pocket. There's about $6,000 in there. What the hell did I call him for? Don't drink, right? Yeah, don't drink my ass. Just wait till this train stops. I show you don't drink. You know, yeah, don't drink this for a while, Charlie. And when that train stopped, I got off, and standing on the platform was my mailman. The guy who delivered the mail. His name was Al, and he was chairman of the local group. And Al said, get in the car. I said, Al, I don't hang out with mailmen. No offense. I don't hang out with mailmen. He said, somebody called me about you from New York. Get in a car. Man of my stature could not afford a fist fight with a mailman or anybody else for that matter, get killed. So I got in Al's car. I said, Al, I'm in deep shit here, Al. Yeah, he said, well, if you don't drink, you go to the meeting. So Al took me up to the meeting that night. It was November the 24th, 1965. Haven't had a drink since. First I had that day, I think of these guys. I had that day first. I had that day because they gave it to me. They made me a gift. They gave me a day. And because of all the days that followed, I had that first day from them. I've never been able to be as good a sponsor as my sponsor. I've just never been able to do it. He was some piece of work. He really was. I'd say, John, I don't feel well. He'd say, oh, this may be as good as you'll ever feel. Jesus Christ. I'd say, when do you think I'm going to get a good job? He said, you had one. He said, you had a great job. You were a law professor. You'll never get a job like that again. I said, yeah, well, maybe, when would I get an adequate job? Oh, he said, when you're ready. I said, oh, that's good. When will I be, how will I know I'm ready? He said, you'll have a good job. I'm dealing with a Zen master here, I said to him, I'm a nervous wreck. For Christ's sake, I'm a nervous wreck. What do you expect me to do? He said, hang on. I said, how do you hang on? He said, let go. Where are you going with this kind of a guy, He said, we thought it over. He and the rest of the old farts. He said, we thought it over. Based on your obvious intelligence, your wonderful educational background, we think 7 meetings a week ought to do it. I said, you can't push me around. So I went to 9. Who the hell do they think they are? And I learned my business.
Will control and enjoy.
And I've been around now.
And I'll jumpstart the party and be able to get away with it.
It's fair to say.
As long as I had that, I was in and out of AA.
Sometimes I guess.
Because I'm not going to be in here 100%.
Not really.
I can look like, because for your approval, I can look like I'm in here 100%.
I love Amy.
But I'm not in my innermost self. Where I really live, I'm not in here 100% because I don't have to be.
And I'll tell you what
because I got a back door that if life ever gets painful enough, boring enough, lonely enough, frustrating enough, depressing enough, I'll go get high. Because I think I can.
2 hours. I got about 4 minutes.
And I think I can in the face of overwhelming evidence that I can't. You know what it was? Here's what my drinking was like the last couple of years.
I was supposed to tell you this.
I would hole up somewhere. I would drink. I would go on crying jags. I would feel sorry for myself. I don't bathe anymore because I don't care. This is not a party. This is
when you're new, the sky is falling.
I'm the whiny, crybaby, depressed, drunk that I couldn't even stand. Nobody even wants to drink with me anymore. You drink with me once or twice and that's it.
You just lay them all out.
Because you don't know what I'm going to do. I might be in a good mood. Or I might put my fist through a plate glass window and sever an artery, and you're going to spend the rest of your night in the emergency room
Yep, no, I can see your point there. But don't
or I might just
you
start
joined
whining
AA,
about
you
my
got some new
father.
friends.
like that.
How much I hurt them. You don't know what I'm
should
going to
open up next
right?
week. Your
But it ain't
application's in
good.
there.
This,
People
I'm
over
a
here
party
really like
buster,
you. Your
man.
health
I'm
is
a.
returning.
It's
And when he
pathetic.
gets
That's
through,
why I
I
like
go,
to just
oh,
hole
yeah,
up
if you look at
somewhere
it that
and get
way.
as out of it as I can. Just trying to blot it all out.
Behind, I'm not good enough. I'm not
So did he
19.
solve my problem?
70.
No.
Not smart enough.
He helped me look
78,
at it
I was sober
that way.
quite a while.
I don't really know what
And I was sober
happened
quite
right
a
there.
while because a
That's
judge
why-
had sentenced me to 2 years in state penitentiary and cut me a break and told me
So
I
easy.
needed a place to live. It's called
You want to
very
have 12
And if I could stay in there a year and get rid of
He's I did that.
This
That one didn't last very long.
And I'm
All
not
right,
drinking.
I gotta remember that guy. Where's that guy? Where's that guy? Get the face. Get the face.
Week in and week out, I ain't taking no medications. I've done all that. And I know it always eventually sets me off to go back to drinking.
So you have some more. What the hell else? If one is good, 2 is better, 4 is maybe enough. Take 8, you never can tell 16. And then, of course, it turns on you, as it did for all of us. And then we get to where we come here. Nobody came here riding on a crest, thinking go to meetings, right? And that's true. Don't drink. And when you are new, that is the best thing you could ever hear. Don't drink and go to meetings. Yeah, but my wife, don't drink and go to meetings. Yeah, but the job, don't drink and go to meetings. Because that's what you need when you're first here. But Alcoholics Anonymous surely is more than don't drink and go to meetings. We all know that. Don't drink and go to meetings is to Alcoholics Anonymous as breathing is to life. If you don't not drink and go to meetings, you're going to drink and die. But breathing is not life. Inhaling and exhaling, that's not life. There's much more to it than that. And my brother Immerslin explained it so well, as he always does. It's not the alcohol. It's something else is the matter. Something else is the matter with us, with me. Something else. And that's why our whole program is an inventory, self-seeking, self-searching. And then what's the remedy? What is the remedy for what we have? And it's very, very simple. And I hear it every night at every meeting I go to. They tell me what the problem is, and they tell me what the solution is. And I prefer the solution. And here's what they say at every meeting I go to. They say that I'm an alcoholic and I can't manage my own life. They say probably no human power can relieve my alcoholism, but God could and would if he was sought. And so it seems to me the problem is nothing less than a seeking or a search for an understanding of God. And I speak to you from without a religious base. I don't count myself as a member of any religion. Yet this is the conclusion I have come to. If you read in our book, this is our book, the blue one. And then you read this black part here, see? Don't read this other shit in the back there, that white part, that's no good. Do that. And if you read this book in around the third step, it says this, that remarkable things happen. It says when we sincerely took such a position, the position of the third step, remarkable things happen to us. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided for us. And this is a spiritual law of supply. And does it make sense to you that if you're working for me, will I not give you everything you need to do my work? Will I not make sure that you are comfortable doing my work? And if you are here to do His work, He will provide. That's the spiritual law of supply. And I have seen it over and over and over and over again. And this is what the book says. It says He does not make hard terms for those who seek Him. True? True. Is this a hard term? Is this weekend a hard term? Is going to your group a hard term? To people who know you, care for you, love you. Not a hard term. It says that as we draw near to Him, He will reveal Himself to us. True? True. Clancy said it last night. He revealed Himself to Clancy, to me, to you, as the God of our traditions, a loving authority, who only wants what's good for us. The spiritual life, our book says, is not a theory. We have to live it. And it is not difficult to live it. I don't find it so hard. Let me tell you two things. Listen to this, please. Still, you may say, I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. You and I have always relied on people from time to time. We have been disappointed. I tell you, sadly, that people have relied on me from time to time, and they have been disappointed. And so it says here, your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Did you not crave fellowship when you came? Did you not look, as I did, for someone who would understand? Jesus Christ, is there anybody who knows what's going on here? Is there no one who can help me? And I found the fellowship I could crave. It says our book is meant to be suggestive only. Imagine that. My sponsor never read that. We realize we know only a little. Imagine someone like me saying we realize we know only a little. It's communism. That's what that is. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who still suffers. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something that you do not have. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. And I consider this weekend a great event that has come to pass. It really has. Now here comes the Oxford group. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit And you will surely meet some of us as you trust.
That's what you do. So he says, okay, send him up. So here comes Dowling. He's about 5'6", shocky white hair, pugsy face, arthritis in his spine, uses a cane. Wilson can hear him tapping down the hall. He comes into the room, 5'6", about 6'4", 6'3", or 6'4". Dowling has his overcoat on. Wilson says, take your coat off and let's talk. When he took off his coat, he saw his collar. Now, Wilson revered men of the cloth. And I'm absolutely certain, in all probability, it's because he thought they had something he didn't have. And I've studied most of the letters that Wilson and Dowling wrote over the next 20 years, because from 1940 to 1960, their relationship was incredible. Hadn't been for Dowling, I'm not sure what would have happened to Wilson. I'm not sure exactly what would have happened to AA, because he took Wilson through some really rough spots during that time with his demeanor and just his attitude and the way that he used his spirituality and his religion. So Wilson just fell in love with people of the cloth. So they sat down and started talking, and they talked for 4 or 5 hours and just fell in love with each other. And in the middle of that conversation, or sometime during that conversation, Wilson says to Dowling, will I ever know peace?
And he
Dowling says, no. He says, why? He said, you've been blessed with divine dissatisfaction.
Was once again languishing.
He says, your searching will bring so many people home. That is your blessing. That is your blessing. And as I read that, I just burst into tears. All of a sudden, I knew what we've been teaching each other. To carry out this message that I've been given has been my blessing. And with it, I have done things that I never thought I could ever do, in a way that I never thought that I could do them. That I ever thought that I could do them. What I do know is when I'm in those prisons, when I'm in that homeless shelter, when I'm sitting talking to a drunk one-on-one, and I see their eyes light up, and I know at that moment they know that I know that they know.
And tell John,
I feel absolute exquisite peace.
And only
somebody said one time, you run all the time. What are you running from? I said, I know today I'm not running from anything. I'm running to something. I'm running to something. There's a joy out there, and I want to be in the middle.
John that
the last story is my daddy. At that 14 years of sobriety, Casey and I were coming home. We literally were coming home in our spirituality, in our relationship, in our peace, the whole thing. Daddy, Mama, I made my amends to Mama when she died in 78. She hugged me, and Casey and I, she died of cancer, and for 8 months I'd been sober, and I took Casey down every weekend, and she and Mother just fell in love with each other. I made all my amends, and Mother just hugged me and said, thank God. And then I'd try to make him daddy. My daddy is one of the most beautiful men I've ever known. A very gentle giant. I never heard him raise his voice, but he would just appear. I was in trouble, there'd be daddy to take care of me. That was just daddy. I adored him. And I would try to make my amends, and Daddy would say, Burns Mac, please, I don't want to talk about it. When Daddy died, Daddy married about 8 months after Mama died to a woman that was a gift to God, to us. A good friend of his and Mother's. And when Daddy died, Peggy told me that Daddy wouldn't listen to my amends because he was too ashamed. And I said, of me? And she said, no. Your daddy was ashamed of himself. He thought he was called
the San Fernando Valley. So we went from different places. I'm telling Buddy Holly, Buddy.
So when I would try to talk to Daddy, and he would talk, I wanted Daddy so much. From what I was talking about, Burns Mac, it's okay. Burns Mac, it's okay.
I said, Buddy, we got a guy in my neighborhood.
He actually had microinfarct dementia, but it looked like Alzheimer's. For about the last 5 years of his life, I'd just go down, and he got to where he didn't know me, he didn't know who Mother had ever been. He didn't know Peggy. He didn't know my brother. So I'd drive down every weekend and work with Daddy. And on the way down, I'd say, God, take away my pain.
He didn't know what I was talking about.
About a 250-mile drive one way. And I'd pull up and go into the nursing home where we put him because he needed health care. And it wouldn't work, and I'd cry all the way back home. Next weekend, I'd go down. Finally, this one weekend, the therapy, the steps, the whole deal. And I pulled up next to